So over the years, these are all things business owners have said to me. Like the banker says he can't make the loan, but I have no idea why. Ever since my accountant retired from his firm, it seems like I'm not getting good advice or service, but I don't really know. I have the hardest time getting in touch with my attorney about this lawsuit. And when he does respond, I have to explain it all over to him again. This has all really happened, and we need to go fix this. Welcome to the Live Truly Free podcast.
On last week's episode, we talked about how to talk with these experts, lawyers, insurance guys, accountants, and kind of dealing with them and knowing your own authority that you have over your own company and not giving that authority to them, kind of leading them to best help you run your company. I asked you this question. Well, how do we find these people in the first place? But we already ran a little long, so we said we'll talk about that this week. So
I love the question, AJ. That's what we want to do. Is I'm practical. I'm a rubber meets the road kind of guy. And after 25 years or more of leading 19 companies, I've seen all kinds of stuff. And so what I did in a lot of the leadership positions was interact with all of these professionals. So I had to go find good ones. And I would say on a real high level, you have to ask good questions.
And I'm guessing the process for coming up with those good questions comes from your expertise in your own business, right? It's like, I know what I need for my business. So you go into the meeting intentional, I need these answers for my business. Is that kind of how you're saying it?
You need to know what you're looking for.
Guiding questions that you should be thinking about when interacting with any of these professionals.
Right. And so all of these experts, by the way, are trying to expand their services, okay, which may or may not be good. But here's what a CPA is. You got to understand personality here. A good CPA is good with detail, and accounting is accounting for what has happened in the past. A CFO, financial guy, is good with the present to the future. A lot of these firms are trying to tell you they can be the CFO, a financial advisor too. And it's like, but I need you to be detailed with the tax law, and I need you to be ruthless in accounting for what happened. It's a different mindset. And when I go to my accountant, I want them drilling what's happened. I want them reviewing my books, not in a formal review, but looking things over. If they spot inconsistencies or problems, let me know. Let me know what you're seeing.
So your accountant, you're not looking for prescriptive advice. You're looking more for what is happening in my business. Maybe you have a list of accounts that you're questioning what's going on with, and you go in with that account and they'll tell you everything that's happened. But when you're going to a CPA, you're trying to get a better understanding of the past and how that's got you to where you are today, rather than going to them asking, how do I do better in the future?
Yes. Now, that's expensive, but you only need to learn it once. So think of it like paying for tuition. Working with your accountant on your books, and they're looking at, here's what's happened in your books, and here's how things are being accounted for. They want the books to make it easy for them to put together the tax return. That organization on the chart of accounts will not work from a financial evaluation standpoint. It just never does. So say, how do you pick a good CPA? I'm going for tax, and I want to get a feel for this person. I will tell you, there's kind of like two feels. Okay. One is they feel like they're an IRS agent. So what I'm going to ask awkward questions. For example, how aggressive are you with tax write-offs? Oh, they are like, well, how comfortable are you taking the full depreciation per the law in a year? I want to know how aggressive they are.
And what's the right answer to that? Because if they're too aggressive, that can lead to a lot of problems. But if they're too by the book, they're never going to work.
No. There's no such thing as too aggressive. Because I'm going to be inside the law.
You want a CPA who's going to get you right to the brink of the law to save you money, but not cross over the line.
Right. Because I've seen these guys, where they don't do that. And it's like, well, that's not really about, you could be you're at risk for an audit. I'll tell you, there's some things I don't do. I don't do a home office write-off because it's an audit risk. I want them to guide me in that. I'm looking for creative thinking within the boundaries of the tax law. The ones that feel like IRS agents, it's kind of like one size fits all. They're very blunt. They don't dig into the nuances of stuff. And part of it is they want it to be easy. So they don't, because their signature goes onto this thing. If you're audited, they got to be there. They're signing up to, you're paying them to audit, and you need to understand that. And they need to understand that. You need to understand. So if you do my tax return, what does that mean? Well, you give me your books, I do your tax return. Okay. But what happens if I get audited? Talk about that now. Interview 3 people. Whether it's lawyers, CPAs, or whatever, how do we find out about accountants? It's usually not a Google search. It's usually my friend said, hey, this is my accountant and I really like them. Here's what you don't know about your friend.
They don't know their account. They don't know
How do
anything about their
they
accountant.
Evaluate their accountant? How do they? Yes, exactly. You can see that one coming a mile off, right?
Yeah. All right. So that seems pretty good with advice for CPAs. I actually never thought about it in terms of like you're trying to evaluate them almost as like a partner in helping me save money but also avoid going to jail. So you really want someone who's going to really help you straddle that line perfectly. But now I guess another question, a similar professional that everybody has to deal with. What are you looking for? What are you asking? What are you thinking about when you're going to pick a bank, when you're picking a banker? When you're going into the bank, what are you thinking? Because I feel like that's probably the most intimidating setting. They just seem like they have a lot of power. And so it's an intimidating setup when you walk in.
Right. So with banks, okay, first of all, they're great at taking your money and making deposits. All right. But actually, if you get into the nuts and bolts of that, they're not so great, some of them. You can know the reputation of the bank before you go in, and you should. Again, I say at least 3. You want to interview and you want to get a feel for the bank. So, well, we've been here since 1893. Well, okay. And you know what? They think like they're in 1893 too. I need them in 2023. I need them with the latest fraud things. I need them with the latest, withdrawal checks. They need to be I need to have it highly interactive online. A lot of banks are, but it's different. Different banks are different, and some are better than others. Or to say it the other way, some are really bad.
Yeah, and I like what you said this with the CPAs, and you just said it again. I like how you say interview. Um, you're almost going through the same process as you would if you were to hire somebody to work for you. You're going through that same process of picking what professionals are you going to have close business relationships with.
Actually, that's a really good point, and this applies to any of these. You're about to establish a relationship. Moving banks is a nightmare. Changing accountants is expensive. You want to be as right as you can right out of the box.
Yeah.
Interview 5. Keep interviewing, because what you're looking for, especially with a banker, you're looking for a relationship. So you're not only interviewing the person, but you're interviewing the bank. And so I think local, regional is way better than national. I've worked on all the levels. Okay. And I've been in good regional banks and bad regional banks. Oftentimes you're looking to borrow money. Okay. So I want to establish a relationship with the banker, and I'm going to bring this up. They have the loan committee. Well, I'm sorry, AJ, but we're just going to have to put this in front of the loan committee. And you're like, the loan committee? Yes.
And that sounds like a negotiating tactic to me.
It's like sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Now, I want to be working with the guy who's on the loan committee. Well,
because he's going to have an idea of what that loan committee's thinking, how they work, how they operate. And
if you've been 10 years in business and you've got a long track record, you're going to get that guy if you want. Senior, we don't, everybody's a VP at a bank, okay? so the thing is that you want senior VP or the senior VP or the SSS VP.
Yeah.
So these guys, because honestly, they don't want to say, well, AJ, I'm turning you down, buddy.
They don't
No,
want to say it to your face.
they go, the loan committee wouldn't approve your loan. And you're like, okay, now what do I do? Different banks have different ratios. Now, let me just make one caveat. We're in a highly regulatory world right now. And
Especially with banking.
yeah, and with the bank failures, the government thinks more regulations. Well, you know what? They put more regulations on it. And we've had more bank failures since the regulations. So these guys have rules to follow, but the regional guys, it's still relational. Don't think that just because it's in a high regulatory environment, it's not relational, because it is. And they can do certain things. And it's like, and you need to talk to the guy you want, or gal, is going to be helping you understand the banking world, not telling you about your business, but telling you, they're looking at your business and going, you go like, I need to leverage, I would like to leverage my business so I can grow faster. What do you see in my business that I could borrow against? What do I have that I can leverage? I want to ask questions that will get me to this answer. How flexible are you in lending? Or how risk averse are you in lending? Which means you're tighter, you're easier, and you're starting to discover some things that they wouldn't necessarily tell you. Like, oh yeah, we can automatically do a $10,000 loan on the blah blah. Have you thought of an SBA loan? Yes, but I understand it's just a boatload of paperwork and it's a regulatory nightmare. They go, well, we have a way to cut through that. Oh, well, tell me about it. They're good bankers who will work with you to get you to your goal. So you need to show the banker, here's where I'm trying to go. Here's how I'm doing it. Here's the success I've had. Or here's the struggles I've had. And how can you help me? And you have a
And
plain conversation about it.
I think it's a little bit different than the CPA, in that you want a CPA who's going to save you the most money that the law allows, right? With a banker, what are you looking for in that risk aversion assessment? Because if they're too risky, that could be a benefit to you in that, oh, it will probably be easier for me to get a loan from them if I need it. But also the flip side of that is, well, if they're just willing to lend money to anybody, how long is this bank going to be around? Especially in the environment when we're seeing a lot of bank failures right now.
I don't think I would be concerned about that.
I
I
mean,
don't think
yeah,
I don't think that's really the issue. That's their problem, not your problem.
okay.
I
And
I
because
think
the
what
FDIC basically insures.
Well, look, they've got deposit requirements and all these other requirements, and they have to maintain certain ratios. Here's the problem in the day's environment: is they pay very low interest rates, so their deposits have dropped dramatically. That's why the regional banks are going out. And so it's a tight money situation. So it's harder to get a loan right now. What I would want is I want a relationship where I've got someone who's going to work with me, help me grow my business, figure out how I can creatively leverage my business, which means borrow money if it makes sense. I'm going to be the judge of how. Oh, I could get you $1 million loan there, AJ. You're like, whoa, ho, 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 there, buddy. We're not borrowing $1 million. I mean, I
Yeah.
might do 100,000, but I'm not doing 1 million. You know, and so, but that's good to know. That's good to know. I've got upside potential there.
Yeah.
So
And you
you're
just
gonna
brought out you just made another point that you said with the CPAs that I'm kind of drawing a parallel with here, is you said you wanted somebody who thinks creatively and how to assist you. You said that with both the CPA and the banker.
right.
And with that, what I mean with what I'm interpreting when I hear that is, one, I do hear like creative. They can think outside of the box and try to find other solutions. Another part I hear is that they're an expert because they know all of these different solutions and how to pass them out. But the most important thing I'm hearing is that they care, because they could be the most creative banker or CPA in the world, but if they don't care about you,
Right.
they're not going to be creative for you. Like, you know what I mean? So you want somebody who like cares about your business and kind of feels invested with you. And that,
Mhm.
I feel like that ties into the relationship you talked about, is like when you meet them and on that interview, does it feel like they actually care about you? Or are you just another customer who walked in after one and another guy's going to walk in after you? and you're just another, like, you're just a person in the line on the assembly line that just they keep pushing through.
Right, right. So yeah, when I say relationship, that's what I do. Man, yeah, they
Yeah,
care about you. I mean, isn't that what relationships are about? Oh, anyhow.
yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. The thing too is how long have they been a banker? So bankers see lots of different businesses. I want a banker who is kind of specializes in my industry or my niche or something. But I also like the idea that, like, I was working with a construction company and we did this, and that could possibly work for you. Whoa, that's huge. That guy, I am like, if I found that in a banker, I'm there. Like the CPA, are they a banking regulator I'm talking to, which is like, sometimes you're dealing with, or like an IRS agent, or are they really aggressive? And I'm interested with a bank. A lot of times you can get the reputation of the bank. Are they growing? How many new locations are they adding? That sort of thing. What's their commercial lending like? What's their commercial department like? Yeah, we don't do a lot of that. We do mostly real estate. I'm moving on. I mean, in other words, so this is a match to your
Yeah, you're trying to find a
personality.
match more with a banker.
Right.
Okay. When you're looking for a lawyer, what are you looking for, and how do you pick one of those guys?
Yeah. So the thing about, first of all, you need to know exactly what you need. Okay.
That's the theme
And
with all of these.
right, right. But particularly with attorneys, because there's lots of specialties and you need to know what their specialties are. And if their specialties is like, 3 or 4 sentences, that's not a specialty. Okay. So, and there's all different kinds of personality, like we've talked about maybe in the previous podcast, but there's litigators, which is the aggressive attack dog. You've got tax attorneys, which are more like accountants. Because they're all real wonky and stuff like that. The oil and gas guys are interesting. So we're in Texas, so it's a lot of oil and gas attorneys, and there's a lot of they're kind of almost more like the lean toward the accounting side because it's all regulatory and there's all these minutia rules and commissions and state things and stuff. Corporate attorneys, finding a good one, believe it or not, it's not just filing in the corporation. You can actually do that yourself. What
Yeah.
it is it's navigating, it's putting together good, solid corporate agreements.
Yeah. So first step, clearly know what type of attorney you need, because each attorney specializes in a very different subset of law. Because you don't want to go to an oil and gas attorney if you're talking about a corporate divorce. Like that. I mean, maybe they have some general advice, but they're not going to have the details that you need for them. So
Unless,
once
of
you
course,
do,
you're in the oil and gas business.
yeah, exactly. But
Just saying.
when you, so once you know what attorney you're looking for, how do you know where they fall on that attorney bell curve? Like, is this guy going to be a guy who's going to win me this case or lose me this case? And how many better guys are there, you know?
Yeah. So you've got to do some homework on attorneys. You're probably going to be referred. There's huge national firms, there's local firms. What I would actually look for is, because I know guys like this where they were with the national firm for a while, then they broke off and started their own smaller boutique firm. And I need them to be networked. I need them to, so let's say it's a corporate attorney, but I need them to have buddies in the different specialities. And what a lot of these guys do these days, especially now, is, so the big firms, you've got all the different practices in the firm, right? But the small boutique guy, like, he breaks off, he's a corporate attorney, but he's got good relationships with the oil and gas guy, the litigator guy, the bankruptcy guy, all these different specialities. So they're not a big firm, but he's got really good relationships with these people. And so that's the first thing. The second
Is their network.
their network and their reputation. You need to study their history. I don't
So
know.
like what we talked about with accountants is you don't generally find those online. Attorneys, do you think this is going to be the most intense online research you should do?
Well, I would do online research on all of these categories, but you'd ask your buddies, you're looking for this kind of an attorney, and they refer. I do is I've already researched the issue. I know exactly what I want the answer to. I want to get in and get out.
Got it. So in this one, you need to be even more hyper focused in what you exactly you need, because every second you don't know exactly what you need, every minute you don't know exactly what you need is costing you a lot of money.
Well, yes, yes. But here's the thing. In other words, I don't need them. Let's say you need a partnership agreement. I don't want them to start it from scratch. I don't want them to pull their boilerplate. What I would do is I would start a draft. And then, because there's going to be certain things I definitely want to make sure happen a certain way. I'm going to have done a lot of heavy lifting on that document. I want them to review it, beat it up. If I really want a solid corporate agreement, I may not even go to a corporate attorney. I might go to a litigator who's good at busting corporations and go,
He'll look at that.
shoot this document to pieces, and then go to the corporate attorney. You see, so I'm gonna jump from speciality to speciality. If that's a big deal to me, it just depends what you need. But honestly, a lot of this stuff, like, with LegalZoom or Legal Online or whatever, you can get stuff. It's all boilerplate, but they all start with boilerplate, which is just simply a standard document. And then they go, okay. And they'll take you through a little interview. And they go, well, how many partners? What are their percentages? And they just start asking you all these questions. You know what? The same thing with the CPA. I don't need them. I can go do TurboTax, right?
Mhm.
I can spend $200 on TurboTax for Business and do it myself. I'm hiring the CPA for a different reason.
Yeah.
Same thing. I could go to LegalZoom, but that's not going to get me the protection I want in my legal document.
The overarching thing is know what you need and know what you're looking for in that expert, and if they reach up to that expectation or not before you even get to them. And then that way you kind of know when you get to them, it's treat it like an interview. And that's going to kind of minimize your chances of getting into a bad relationship.
Yeah. And you know what? You could even ask for that. You can ask all of these guys, but particularly attorneys. You could ask and say, I'm searching for a good corporate attorney. Because with a corporate attorney, I want he's kind of the closest thing for a business, the closest thing to the general practitioner in the doctor world. Okay.
Yeah.
And I need him to be well resourced with lots of connections so he can direct me. He goes, I don't do that, George, but Joe over here is great at that. So I'm going to send you to Joe. And I'm like, cool. I'm going to still interview Joe, but now I've got an attorney who's evaluated that attorney, and this is who I refer that kind of issue to.
Yeah,
So
an attorney that you've evaluated has already evaluated this attorney, so odds are it's probably going to be good, but still you need to evaluate for yourself.
Absolutely. So I would ask for a little interview, like 10 or 15 minutes. Could I ask you a few questions? I'm trying to find a good corporate attorney. I think they'd actually respect that. One of the things I'd look for, like in a corporate attorney, is I want longevity. I want them to have experience, 10 years minimum, but I need them to have seen a lot of mess. Have you been through corporate divorces? Now that might be a speciality sometimes in some cases. Some will go through it with a client or they may refer that over, but I want them in the middle of that. I don't want the all nice corporate attorney guy who never gets his hands dirty. I need you to be a street fighter who's going to help me figure out how do I put together a quick, easy, fast, strong, well thought out document. You could ask questions like, what kind of exit strategy do you put in corporate documents? And there's in a previous podcast on corporations and LLCs, we talk about that. So those would be the kinds of things I'm looking for, like I'm interviewing. Those would be sort of the kind of interview questions. More than likely, it's going to be a corporate attorney you're going to kind of look to. You'd go off of him would be what I would probably do.
All right, so we kind of talked about all the things, all the good things that we're looking for, and how do we want to evaluate each of these individual experts, because they are very different in their expertise. And I think we did a good job of talking about the details of each one. But I was wondering, do you kind of have like one big general red flag that you have for any of these experts where it's like, if they do this, I know they're not my guy?
Yeah, if they're not an expert. So what do I mean by that? So I've said that a lot of these guys are trying to expand. You see the expand what they do. So with an attorney, it might be, they do all of these different things. They're board certified and they've got like a half a dozen things. I'm like, it's feeling more like a generalist, and that may be okay if those areas are germane to your situation, but they may not be. And especially if you see like he handles marriage, divorces, and corporate work and bankruptcy. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, and I can do oil and gas if you need that. And you're like, oh, no. The CPAs where, and I'm going to probably get a lot of haters on all this stuff. But I'm not trying to take away their business. What I'm saying is be really good at what you do, and you're going to have more business than you need. They don't need to start doing all these other financial services and stuff like that. Just do a good job in protecting your client and giving them the best tax advice and all of that. And by the way, I should say, in complicated tax situations, you need both a tax attorney and a good solid tax CPA.
Yeah.
Just saying. That's a little aside there. With bankers, so okay, we haven't really talked about insurance, but that's okay. Insurance should just be insurance. But a lot of banks now have bought insurance companies. All right. Fine. But usually they keep those fairly separate. So you've got the insurance guy at the bank and you've got your banker. But if my banker starts trying to sell me insurance, I'm like, I'm out. You can refer me and I can go talk to your insurance guy at the bank. And maybe I get a better deal because I'm at the bank. But if I don't get a better deal, I'm going to still shop my insurance. Like I'm going to shop my insurance. So, so I would say I want them to be experts in their field.
Got it. Because you as the business owner, you're already the generalist. You're going to them for an expert. You don't want to be a generalist talking to another generalist about a topic you need expert opinion in.
That's exactly right. And here's the thing, guys, is in our previous podcast, we're talking about leading your attorneys, your bankers, your CPAs, your insurance people, not being led by them. So you're really focused on how do I get the best specialist in this little silo that I need help with? And that's all I'm going to use them for. I'm going to plug them in. I'm going to do the playing. They're not. I am. So check out that episode. Check out last week's episode if you didn't hear it, because I know you're going to find great information there. And in the meantime, may you live truly free.